what you were supposed to do though. Like, it was never hard to come through when you're end of the bargain. You dig?
What precautions should they be taking? What precautions should we all be taking, and then particularly for those who are pregnant or older or in the immune compromised category?
Yeah, so look, I think, one of the biggest things that I would like to emphasize during a time like this is, a lot of people feel really helpless. Like, what can we do? We really can't do much. We just kind of have to wait for this to blow over. And what I typically say to that is every little bit counts, and anything that we can do, any small thing, any small change that we can make in our lifestyle habits can really make a difference towards what's happening, towards these numbers. So, I think a lot of the same things that we're talking about in terms of hygiene will stay in place, and we need to really try and implement those lifestyle changes moving forward. So hand washing, disinfecting, that stuff will reduce the incidence of other respiratory illnesses as well, right? We're heading into monsoon, we're heading into flu season, cold and flu season. I mean, if we keep washing our hands every couple of hours for 20 seconds every time that we wash them, we're going to see a decrease in incidence for ourselves. So there's a combination of protecting ourselves, so washing your hands, protecting others. So that's when you wear a mask, you're not really protecting yourself, you're really protecting others around you. And you have to have the motivation to do that, to really believe that that small gesture will really will result in bringing down the spread of infection. In addition to that, social distancing, I think, is going to be here to stay for a while. So as and when we can refrain from large gatherings and crowding into small spaces, whenever we can, and those of us that can, we need to really do our best to do that. In addition to that, I think that you're going to see a lot of other things sort of kick in as well. So if we do go to public arenas, public spaces, again in the near future, I think we're going to see a lot of hands-free, contactless things being implemented. So whether it's checking in, checking out, greeting people, implementing it in interior design, I think it's going to be something that people sort of keep at the forefront for a long time to come. And then, personally, I think we can also be doing a lot more. So in terms of contact tracing and symptom checking, it's not enough to just check a fever. You really, if you're running a workplace, or you're going into a workplace, or you're running a home or an apartment building, you really have to keep track of people's contacts. In addition to that, you have to keep track of other symptoms. So we're not just talking about fever, we're talking about shortness of breath, coughing, nasal congestion, muscle aches, the other things that we know people express for the ones that are symptomatic.
Okay. That's actually some really great insight. So I know everybody's in this place where you're wondering how things are going to play out. So many people waiting for the lockdown to end, but I think there isn't that much. I think there isn't that much thought to the fact that the lockdown ending doesn't really mean things go back to what was normal. That's going to take a while, I think, until we have a vaccine or some kind of cure and all the things that they're talking about now that they could potentially come up with to combat this disease. But I love your insight into how even when we go back to some form of life, it won't be the same. There will be a lot of changes to expect. What do you think of the flu shot for people who are immune compromised, like we were discussing?
So, the flu shot helps with the flu, right? So for people that have not had the flu shot who are immunocompromised, I would strongly recommend the flu shot. However, it is important to note that the flu and COVID-19 are two very separate viruses. And so obviously, if you get the flu shot, you're not going to get any protection from COVID-19.
Any precautions you would suggest for children, and then immune boosting foods? I've had a lot of questions about immune boosters and supplements as well.
You just repeat the question once more. You went out again. Sorry.
No problem. Any precautions in particular for children? I know a lot of people who have children who are resistant to wearing masks and to sanitizing as much. And of course, in my house, my kids have now they wash their hands, count till 20. They won't go even into the elevator without a mask. But children are, of course, everyone has kids of different ages and different understanding levels. So what are your recommendations for kids at this time?
Well, I have much less experience than a lot of moms out there. I have twins who are just a little over 2, so
Oh,
I don't have
wow.
that many years of experience. But I will say, the famous saying, "Monkey see, monkey do," right? Whatever they see you doing, they will immediately absorb. The younger they are, the more resistant they are, but also the more they imitate you. So if they see that you're doing things that are that you incorporate in your day, that you're doing something regularly, they will start to do it regularly too. And we try and make it fun. The hand washing for 20 seconds. If you sing happy birthday really slowly a couple of times, twice in a row, that's actually 20 seconds. And so things like that, try and make these things fun for them. They don't understand the gravity of what's going on. They don't understand the weight of what's going on. So are they going to wear masks? Some will, some won't, depending on their age. But I think the social distancing is going to be imperative for them, just because you feel bad, and you're tempted that they haven't had any, child interaction. And, big groups are just a mistake. We have to be ultra cautious right now until, we have other measures put in place.
A lot of questions as well, including some over here about available supplements and immune boosting foods.
About what? Say that again.
Available supplements and also immune boosting foods. So supplements as well for immunity. Any, we don't have to go into like brand names, but any particular like vitamin or things we should be looking for, and then immune boosting foods.
So look, vitamins and nutrients and minerals are really subjective based on your personal circumstances, right? So if you are in a situation where you don't think you're getting those vitamins and minerals in your diet, then you can turn to supplements, and some of the things that we refer to for immunity are vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, selenium, iron. But these are all important nutrients to have anyway, right? So as long as you know that your levels have always been normal, there's no point in going out right now and just trying to overdose on a bunch of vitamins and supplements. I think it's more important that we try and eat a balanced diet, that we try and eat a highly plant infused diet where we're getting 60 to 70% at least of our diet is plants. And if we're doing that and we're hydrating ourselves, we're really probably doing our bodies the best justice that we can.
Great, that's really helpful. And then going into a few more, so I actually want to talk a little bit about COVID, because a lot of the questions I got when I put this chat up, looking at your background in particular, have been about COVID, and this is stress that everyone's dealing with, even though it's been 2 months now. I realized today that it's been exactly 2 months since I've left, even like my apartment. So anyway, with that, there's still a lot of anxieties. Let's talk a little bit about COVID. What happens when you test positive?
So I think that the protocol, from what I can understand over here, keeps changing, right? But I think that when you test positive, immediately, we're all aware that in one form or another we need to go into quarantine, and what that means is really being separated from anyone else to the extent possible. It's a very difficult thing for us to do here in India, obviously, but I think it's also important to note that there's beyond symptomatic relief. And your brother was on. I did actually see that chat, and I'm so glad that, I hope he's doing better, and I'm so glad that he was on the mend when he did that chat. But he said the same thing, right? I mean, beyond symptomatic relief, there's really nothing we can do at this stage. So it's really just if it's treating the symptoms. If you have a sore throat, it's hot water gargle, steam inhalation, doing all the things that you would do for an upper and lower respiratory illness. Taking vitamin supplements at that point, that might help you boost immunity, but at that stage, it's really just trying to deal with what you're going through symptomatically.
There is a question about how do you check your levels. I'm guessing it means the levels of vitamins. That's usually through a blood test. For Jay, I know you're asking, what is the test advice to check normal levels for all vitamins? So that's usually a blood test, but at this point, I don't think anyone would recommend doing any kind of elective testing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Malika.
Yeah, I think right now is definitely not the time to get into elective testing. That's
Yeah.
couldn't have said it better myself. I just, I mean, what you knew before we went into this is what you should sort of work off of. And again, going back to just sticking to a balanced diet and making sure you're getting your nutrition from what you're eating is the best thing that you can do. Going out and trying to order supplements, on the hunch that you're low on a certain vitamin or the fact that somebody else in your family is low on a certain vitamin is not the way to go.
That's helpful. And then the next question I had for you was how does social isolation or how has social isolation or distancing worked to flatten the curve? Do you think it's something that has been working for us particularly because all we're getting on the news is numbers skyrocketing and I know while we're flattening the curve, we're also lengthening it. So what is your take on social isolation?
Yeah, I think, look, I think that we have absolutely, there's no doubt that we have been able to reduce the numbers by keeping away from each other. There's just no doubt that's what the numbers have proven. What we should expect is that when we open up, we will obviously see a spike because it's going to happen. We also, we don't know how many people that are expressing symptoms are being tested. We don't know how many people who are not expressing symptoms are being tested. And so we don't actually know that denominator number of how many people are in fact infected. So if we, tomorrow all of a sudden get the capacity to test more or, reduce the requirements that one needs right now to get tested, and also open things up, you're going to see an exponential rise in cases. I mean, of course. But I think that in terms of flattening the curve, absolutely keeping the distance. What does flattening the curve mean? Let's talk about that. Flattening the curve really means that we've alleviated the burden on our healthcare systems. What happens? Okay, what this curve really does is you see the spike, but then if we have increased severity, that's going to put a dent and a burden on our healthcare systems, which is something that we've seen globally. And the whole point, if for nothing else, we may not be reducing the caseload, we may not be reducing, the infectivity, we may not be reducing even the severity by staying distant from each other and by staying isolated, but we are preventing from all of it happening at the same time to everybody. And that is, in essence, flattening our curve and helping, alleviate our healthcare workers and the lack of resources that are available to all of us at the same time.
That's helpful. And I also know that, like, for everyone who is watching, the government does seem to be doing a lot. Every couple of days, we're hearing about new centers like the Race Course, NSCI, Willingdon Club that are being turned into like isolation centers. So I do feel like the healthcare system is getting that gap in terms of time that it's needed to ramp up. We have a question from Jay, who says he's vegetarian and Jain and would like to get it checked. It's difficult for him to get vitamins in a normal diet. I think even if you're vegetarian, you should be okay in terms of your vitamins. It's more your protein that you need to be aware about. What do you think?
So, the actual amount of protein, there is a misconception about the actual amount of protein that we need in a day. And so if you have primarily a plant-based diet, which you would if you're vegan and you're vegetarian, as long as you're making sure that, if you're vegan and you're vegetarian, it's not just about not eating meat and not having dairy, but it's also about infusing your diet with essential fruits and vegetables, then you really, our likelihood is that you are getting the protein that you required in a given day.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of a misconception about protein when it comes to vegan and vegetarian diets that I just always feel the need to clarify, because what we actually need is we need other things that protein gives us. We need iron. We need other things that protein gives us, but we don't necessarily need an exorbitant amount of protein that animal protein gives us.
That's really helpful. That's something that I wasn't aware of either. Not ever having been a vegetarian. My next question to you is saltwater gargles and steaming. Does that work as a preventive as well? I know a lot of people, including my dad, who's a doctor, every evening he's sitting with a steamer and steaming, and he gets stressed about his comorbidities, given the infection rate and how quickly it's catching. Even to people who've not stepped out of the house. So, what do you think about steaming and saltwater gargles as well as preventives?
Look, again, steaming and saltwater gargles help with symptoms. They do not prevent us from getting COVID. We may turn out to be asymptomatic. We may have, you know, less severe symptoms if we're doing saltwater gargle and steam inhalation. For people who are a little older, immunocompromised, you know, it might be a good idea for them to do these prophylactically just with respect to symptoms. It doesn't necessarily mean that they won't get the infection.
Yeah. There's a question from Prachi saying, so happy to see you. See your passion with others. Sorry I joined late, but any advice for kids given the COVID situation?
Hi, Prachi. I miss you. What is the advice for kids? You know, in terms of, you know, keeping them busy and occupied and sort of managing expectations, I think everybody's just kind of doing the best that we can. I think in terms of, you know, infection, look, there's a lot of research that's going on right now. There's a lot that we don't know. So the best advice I can give you is, despite the fact that you may be tempted to have them socialize because they feel, you know, suffocated at home or stifled, or they haven't met any of their friends, the best advice is to really keep them home, keep them safe. Do not allow them to interact with other families. It's just, you know, you're doing your part in curbing the spread, and I think that's just the most important thing you can do. And make sure that they're, you know, eating their fruits and veggies and getting some exercise in. I can't believe we've gone, you know, what, 20 minutes into the chat and I haven't mentioned exercise yet, but I think it's obviously essential to make sure that the kids are exercising just as much as they sort of used to, because they're much less mobile now, right? So they're not as active, they're not running around doing their regular activities. So try and do anything that you can to get them to keep them active at home.
That's helpful. So we've actually been doing a lot of Zoom classes. My son's been doing Zoom on football, and then his judo class is now on Zoom, which is basically like a 30-minute workout session. So they're doing whatever, at least we're doing whatever we can to keep them active. And I know a lot of people are as well, but it's not easy. I did realize that, like, my son has a tendency to be heavy. So earlier on, maybe a month ago, I was like, okay, his weight is going up because he's not as active. And so let me see what else I can do to make sure that he's getting the physical exercise that he needs. So that's a great thing to keep in mind as well for those home with kids. It actually also helps them get to bed sooner. So it gives you
Absolutely.
A little bit more
It's so important. It's so important with all of us, right? It contributes so much to sleep and energy that we have, and when we're supposed to have energy, and then helps us sleep at night. So
a quick reminder to everyone watching to take a screenshot of the chat and DM it to Physique 57 Mumbai to get 2 complimentary classes from Physique 57. My next question for you, Mallika, and actually the last one that I had, but of course we're taking questions from the audience as they come in. How do we focus on wellness, mental and physical, while we're home? A lot of us are multitasking, trying to work from home, and just don't feel as sane or as productive as we did previously.
Yeah, so look, I think a few things. I think in terms of wellness, it's funny, that's such a funny term. I think what's going to happen at the end of this, whenever that may be, or when we start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, is that wellness will actually be defined much more by people. It will not be so nebulous. I think that what is important to remember in all of the research that's going on out there about for vaccines and for treatments is that the body's absolute best defense is the body itself, right? And you've probably heard so many people say it, but that's just the truth. So I think when we get out of this, you know, people are going to be sick of being sick. I think they're going to want to get ahead of their health, and that brings in this whole wave of preventative health, right? And preventative health, if you ask anyone in allopathic medicine, preventative health is still it's a soft space. It's not so well understood. I think now you're going to get to a phase where you're really starting to look at the science behind nutrition, the science behind exercise, the science behind the environment, and why these 3 things really act together to help you stay well. So I think in terms of in terms of wellness, I think it'll be much more clearly defined. And I think that people are going to be looking for credentials. They're going to be looking for nutritionist credentials. They're going to be looking for, trainers. When all this hype of online fitness and everybody doing everything online, I think what is sustainable for people and what will be sustainable and what people will look to in the future is really people who have training and people who have a lot of experience in what they're talking about and what they're doing. And so, and then for mental health, for mental wellness, I should say, it all goes hand in hand. So if you're home and you're struggling, I think the best thing that you can do right now is really pace yourself. So it all of a sudden feels like we've cut a couple of hours of commute out of our day and all of a sudden we have to be that much more productive. That's just not the case, because this is really this is the new normal, and we're going to be stuck with this new routine for quite a while to come. So I'm often reminded by my family members as well to pace myself, and I think that's really important. And I think just avoiding panic and understanding the risks for what they are, but just not panicking right now is really important. And then I think I always talk about this astronaut who came on CNN many weeks ago with Dr. Sanjay Gupta and talked about the fact that NASA has shown that isolation really impacts our immunity negatively, and our immunity takes a hit from isolation. And I think that we need to do what we can right now to stay connected. Come to these live chats, come to group classes, schedule calls with your friends. I mean, anything that you can do to make sure that you remind yourself that you're still connected to the outside world in some way, even though it's virtual, is really, really going to help us with our mental health. And then, of course, again, exercise. Exercise reduces cortisol levels. You have endorphins, which really help with, mood swings and things that you may be feeling that sort of swing in and out in your day. It helps us with sleep, which is also so important for immunity, right? So exercise helps immunity, but sleep also helps immunity, and exercise helps sleep. So that's super important. So if you can just sort of, schedule your days, try and break it up with a little bit of variety. Don't panic. Schedule some exercise, focus on, what you have in front of you, and try and stay connected to people. I think that's the best advice that I could probably give.
That was really helpful, and it's actually a question I get very often as well about kids, like how do you keep them sane? And I feel like having some kind of a routine, it doesn't have to be very fixed, but something like this is mealtime, this is bedtime, this is the time where we like free play or have board games. It's actually really helped keep them sane and keep me sane as well. We have a lot of questions that have come in, so I'm going to start with Gauri. She's asking about the future of the fitness industry and your views.
Oh, hi Gauri. The fitness of the future industry. Look, I think, like I said before, I think that people are going to be much more aware of their options. I think, when I talk about Physique 57 specifically, and I think that this speaks to your audience, Tanya, which is why I think it's important that I bring it up. There are workouts that are designed for different types of people, different behaviors, different levels of activity. There are very few workouts that are designed with the woman's body in mind. And I think that once we're through this, people are really going to be looking at what works for them and their bodies. And so I think that, in the future, or in the near future, we will definitely see a lot happening online. You just cut out. Are you there? I lost you.
I can hear you.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, I got you. No, so I think that in the future we're going to be seeing a lot online, but I think that as this sort of spike levels out, we will see people looking for credentials. We will see people that looking for things that are backed by evidence, backed by science. And that's going to be really key moving forward. So you will see a lot happening virtually. You will see a lot of digital platforms begin, but I think that there'll be a spike in the very near future, and then things will start to level out, and people are going to become much more educated about, what works for them, what's fact, and what are myths, and what are things that, that change when they go from professional to professional. I think there's going to be a lot more standardization in the fitness industry, in the wellness industry, and in the health industry.
That was helpful. Prachi says, I keep hearing that the strong mental health is one of the best medicines for COVID.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. Strong mental health is it's really important, right? When our cortisol levels go up, it affects our immunity negatively. So we need to do things in our day that can really bust those cortisol levels down and break those down. And I think so. I mean, I can speak to obviously the exercise part of it, but other things as well. Again, staying connected. Doing things that, everybody talks about breathing and meditation. I am not somebody who does enough of breathing and meditation, but what I will tell you is that exercise, you need to breathe, right? A lot. And you're dispelling a lot of that carbon dioxide, that breathing at whatever rate it's at, as long as you're focusing on the exhale, is really important. And I'll also say that, workouts that are set to music like ours is, and I know that there are others out there that are, but the music helps so much, right? It'll get your heart rate going, and that contributes to the post workout endorphin boost that we experience after exercise. So I think, yeah, mental health and things that you can do, breathing, meditation, exercise, to make sure that and just downtime. I think it's also really important to sort of cut off in your day in terms of the COVID information. So like set a COVID curfew, right? Where post a certain point in your day, you're not consuming any more information on COVID. I think that's going to be important also, because otherwise, there's no end to it.
For sure. I think I reached a point in quarantine where I was like, this is my hard stop for COVID information, and that's it. I'm not watching the news every evening anymore, because it was getting to me, and it's hard to kind of then keep yourself positive and the kids positive when you're burdened with all that. Lots more questions that have come in. Ipsa Narang is asking, could you throw some light on functional medicine in comparison to traditional medicine?
Sure. I mean, traditional medicine is such a hard term because there's Ayurvedic medicine, there's allopathic medicine, and those are two different philosophies. There are other philosophies in terms of traditional medicine. I think that functional medicine focuses a lot more on what we were talking about earlier, so preventative health, and really focusing on the end result being getting back to function. It's not just about treating symptoms with either Ayurvedic medicine or treating symptoms with allopathic medicine. It's really it's backing up, it's stepping away, it's looking at the whole body, at the lifestyle of the body, at the environment of the body, and then making sure that you pull in various factors in your environment, in your daily living, and in your routines, to improve overall function. And it's a multifaceted approach. So it's, a bunch of things that sort of work together to lead to your overall health and wellness and recovery. It's not just, a medicine or a single treatment of some kind or a surgery of some kind. That's really the difference between functional medicine and traditional.
And then Rena's asking, we talk about credentials. I agree. Can you tell us a little bit more about how your instructors are trained? Is there a specific program in place?
Absolutely. Hi, Rena. Yeah. So look, our trainers have been very meticulously taught. So we sent them to the US for a period of 6 weeks when they first started. Where they went through training with our core team in New York City, and these are the people that sort of founded the method and have been working. It says I'm paused.
Yeah, can you hear me? Cut out there for a second.
For poor connection.
No.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Froze for a second, but you're back. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
You were talking about the training that your trainers received. No.
Yeah, so the trainers have gone. So the trainers were sent to New York to be trained by the core team who has been, who's developed the method and been doing the method for over 10 years. And so it was a 6-week intensive training where they received their certifications. Then they came back to India and trained for another 6 months under virtual supervision. And everybody knows how intense virtual supervision can be. I think after the last 8 weeks, we can all speak to the fact that quality is not compromised virtually, right? So they were heavily tracked for 6 months, and then they do check-ins at least every couple of weeks now, still with the global team, to make sure that we're keeping abreast of the latest and greatest that we're doing within the method. So it's a very intense training method. Less than sort of 5% of people that try out really make the cut in the first place. All of the trainers are actually professional dancers, and that's really important. So we are not a dance workout by any stretch, but it's really important that the instructors are dancers because they study things their whole life. They study things like, kinesiology and physiology, and they understand that the smallest adjustment in alignment and form can really result in results or injury, right? And those are the people that have been trained their whole life really on that subject matter. So they take professional dancers to begin with, who then audition. Less than 5% of those that audition really make the cut. Then they go to New York, then they come back, and then there's ongoing training and continuing education for them.
I've actually I actually signed up for a month of Physique 57. I was one of the first people when you just opened. So I have taken your classes and can absolutely vouch for every trainer being fabulous. I know I've tried like the different workouts and the different levels of them actually with Sanya, with Anisha, with some of the male trainers as well, and they were all fabulous. And there's actually also, for everyone watching, there is a quick Physique 57 workout on my IGTV, on my Mommy Diary Stay Home series, which Anisha put together for us as well. So do check that out. And of course, take screenshots of this, of us talking, and DM it to Physique 57 Mumbai right now to get 2 complimentary classes. The last question from iCurious Dumpling. Any suggestions for people with vitamin D deficiency?
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
Sorry, my headphones keep going in and out.
No
for vitamin D deficiencies, what's really important to note is that as a population, Indians actually have one of the lowest bone densities as a result of a vitamin D deficiency that we're sort of genetically predisposed to globally. So, and then Indian women face additional issues with that, vitamin D deficiency susceptibility, in addition to issues, hormonal issues, which result in poor bone density later on in life. It's really important that when you're exercising, first of all, of course, supplements. So you need to make sure you're tracking your levels, and you need to make sure that you keep your vitamin D levels as close to normal as possible. Beyond that, when it comes to exercise, it's incredibly important that you pick a form of workout, which again, ours is, and is one that you can speak to as well, Tanya, which is low impact, right? So if you are doing high impact, high intensity workouts where you're putting a lot of pressure on your bones, you're not going to be able to build bone density, even though you're doing exercises which technically should build bone density. If you're doing low impact but high intensity workouts, which include things like resistance training and weight bearing exercises, which are really, really important for bone density, then you don't necessarily see an improvement in your vitamin D levels, but you will see an improvement in bone density. So vitamin D is, a nutrient that you need to get from your diet and from sunshine. But the effect that vitamin D deficiencies can have on things like our bones, our immunity, exercise really plays an important role there to make sure that those things are boosted. So make sure you find the right type of exercise that boosts your or helps you build your bone density.
Great. That was really helpful. Thank you so much, Malika, for such an informative and interesting and clearly interactive discussion. I am going to share this on my IGTV for anyone who joined late or missed it so they can catch it as well. Thank you so much. And I do hope everyone has sent screenshots to Physique 57 Mumbai on their DM so that you can get your free classes.
Thanks, Tanya. You've been doing a great job with all of your lives. Thank you so much. Keep it up. It's
Anytime.
entertaining. They're so entertaining. They're so informative. They give us a little break in our day. So we really, really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you
It would
so
be
much.
lovely to talk offline, and I'm sure there's so many things that we could chat about in healthcare. I would love to chat with you
Yes, we have
offline
a
as
lot
well.
in common. I know we've discussed that
We
before,
really
but
do.
definitely we'll keep in touch.
We really do.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again. Thanks for having us. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.